I mean, my target, just the basic browns, it looked like a shotgun had hit it. My spread was so bad. My grouping was terrible. And so I remember asking my instructors, what do I do? What can I do to get better? Because I'm going to wash out. I'm not going to make it if I don't get better quick. And they said, do you have a gun at home? I said, no, I don't. Do you have an airsoft gun? Yeah, I do. And so they said, here's what we want you to do. We want you to practice your 5-step draw, and we want you to practice sighting in on your target, do a slow controlled squeeze, focus on your finger placement on the trigger, try to get to the bottom of the shoe, do a slow controlled pull until you can surprise yourself with the break. And you're going to have to rack the slide between each press. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did that. And I went from looking like a shotgun hit the target over the next couple weeks to looking like a softball went through the center. It was a fantastic improvement.
Hello and welcome to Making Shooters Better, brought to you by Laser Ammo. I'm your host, Terry Vaughan, English by birth, American by choice, and I'm damn happy to live here, legally, of course. Today, I am joined by my co-host, Kristen Wilson-Day, a competitive shooter and marketing guru over here at Laser Ammo. I'm just going to put these teeth back in. And our special guest, Matt Hickman, a former police officer, lifelong martial artist, and the assembly manager behind the most practical dry-fire tools on the market, DryFire Mag. Since 2017, Matt has gone from building magazines at home to leading the assembly team and represented the company at shows across the country. When he's not helping shooters train smarter, he's running a Brazilian jiu-jitsu school in his hometown of, and I'm so hoping I get this right, Kamiah, Idaho. We'll revisit that in a minute. And raising 4 kids who've grown up with DryFire Mags on the kitchen table. Matt, welcome to the show.
Morning, Terry. Glad to be here.
So did I butcher the name?
A little bit. It's Kamiah.
Kamiah. Yeah. I'll practice that. I'll have it down the next time we talk. So because I used to live out in Wyoming, so I'm somewhat familiar with that area, but you tell me, what's life like out where you live and how has it shaped you, if at all?
Sure. So I moved here back in 2012 when my firstborn was on the way in the oven. My wife and I decided we want to move out into the country because we wanted to kind of stack the deck as far as our kids' upbringing and set them up in a place where they can grow up free from a lot of the influences of city life, and at the same time culture them and have a little bit more more impactful control over their exposure in times with things. Not to shelter them, but let kids go out and play in the grass. Let them go outside and catch fish in their own stream. And I mean, my kids, they'll go out now and they'll catch fish in their local stream, go make a fire in the driveway, and they'll cook their own fish. What kids get to do that sort of thing. So that's kind of why we chose to move here, is to give them a little bit more of a sandbox to play in. But I'll say this, I'm actually a West Coast mutt by origin. I was born in Corvallis, Oregon, moved to California, lived near Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo in California, and a lot of time in college towns. And so quite the how has it been like moving to Kamiah? It's been quite an adjustment, going from area where you have millions of people around to living in a town with a population of 1,100. That's an adjustment.
Wow.
And I've really grown to love it. I mean, everybody here, we drive on the highway and people are like, hi, everybody's lifting their hand off the wheel to wave at you. One of the things I remember from California is you're walking on the sidewalk. If you try to make eye contact, it's like, oh, no, you don't. No, you don't. We're not making eye contact. We're not socially engaging. We're pressing on about our business and not engaging with others. There's too many of you, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's been a wonderful adjustment.
It's nice. It kind of harkens back to America of yesteryear. Kids are just being able to go out, play freely. You not necessarily as a parent having to watch them 24/7. They can go out and experience the outdoors.
Right? I do that. You come home with the lights come on, or you get your butt whooped, and it was okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. Moving out to Wyoming, we went from a very large city, Charlotte, and we went out to Wyoming, and the population of the town we were in was about 1,400. And the very first time we all went out as a family to a local restaurant, when we walked in, there was cold. Obviously, Wyoming, it's pretty cold in the winter, and they have those sort of double doors to get in. You have a little mud area to knock off the snow. And as we came into this restaurant, it stopped. It was like an old saloon. Everybody in the restaurant just stopped and looked because everybody knows you are not from around here. And it was funny because at first my kids are like, oh, Dad, this is bad. We need to go. We got to get out of here. And then one family in the back right-hand corner of this restaurant looks over. He tips his Western hat, and he said, "It's okay. He's off Top Shot. He's a shooter. He's all good." And the whole restaurant came back to life. And it was in that moment that I realized, oh, we have moved to the exact right town. This is fantastic.
It's like the stuff you see in the movies when somebody comes in, it's just like snap.
Yep.
And everybody pauses.
Yeah.
Then things go back to life.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I had have been as warmly welcomed if I hadn't have been on that TV show, but that worked. In that moment, I'm like, everything's going to be okay. These are our people. It's going to be fine.
Especially right after you start talking, then it's like, he is definitely not from here.
Now I have to follow up with a question. Now this I know we had our list of things. This is going off script. My kids love Top Shot, and I knew you looked familiar, but I couldn't remember which season.
Season 4.
What season were you? Oh, awesome. Awesome.
4. Yeah, and it's so funny because it wasn't my idea to go on the show. Like, my wife brought it up one day. She's in marketing. And so she came up with this bright idea. She's like, well, you do a lot of speaking. I teach personal safety around the country. And so she brought up this idea. She's like, you should go on the show. You can shoot. And I'm like, listen, I can embarrass myself anywhere at any time. Do you really want me to do it on national television? And eventually she talked me into it. And of course, the rest is sort of kind of history. But yeah, it was a really great experience and a lot more stressful than I anticipated. Mostly because it always looks so quiet in the show. It looks like you got Colby there and then the other competitors. But the reality was there were 250 people off set. There's cameras in your face. The equipment would break. They'd stop the competition if a helicopter went over, even though we were shooting. I mean, none of it made sense sometimes. So a competition that might on TV last a couple of minutes could in reality be 3 hours. And I don't know about the rest of you, but 3 hours to crawl around inside your own head, it's a recipe for disaster.
Well, and I've got to pee at least once every 2 hours or once and a half. So girl problems.
But yeah, but you'll have to now go back and watch it again, knowing that.
Oh yeah,
that'd be kind of it's fun.
My kids, I think it was 2 years ago at SHOT Show, I ran into Ian Harrison from season 1. I saw him walking in the lanes, and I was like, is that Ian Harrison? He's like, nicest guy, but he came over and talked to us for a bit. And I was like, yeah, my firstborn's name is Ian. He's like, well, you can't be all that about a bloke now, can you? Just came over. Yeah, great show. My kids love it. It's one of our favorites.
Yeah, it's a shame it went off the air. It just got too expensive to make. But I've heard a rumor recently that somebody's trying to do a similar show with competitive shooting. So if I come across that actually moving forward and getting greenlit, I'll certainly be sharing it here on the podcast.
I thought they do have something like that on the Outdoor Channel. I don't have it, but there was that people are on it. Like, Tracy Guns, Matt, her from SHOT Show. She was on it. Amba Tactical. He was on it. So this was like over the last year. So it's not a Top Shot, but it is a shooting bow and arrow, like different kinds of that kind of sport. So it is, something is out there. I just can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, name of it.
I think it's for some reason air gunners coming to head, but I don't think that's it. Of course it's going to bother me. So I'll think
we can always, if you remember it at the end, we can always put it in the show notes for people who are interested in watching that. So Matt, before DryFire Mag, you actually wore a badge. You want to sort of walk us through what drew you to going into law enforcement?
Sure. I'm actually kind of a weirdo. I wasn't naturally drawn to that. It was a bit of a, how shall I say this, a rebellious streak for me. My in-laws on my father's side are very afraid of death. Anything to do with military, anything to do with working with anything that could potentially kill you, they wanted to manage that risk. And so growing up, I wasn't particularly interested in that. I was actually studying engineering right before I went into academy, and I was finishing up community college and getting as many credits done there before I transferred potentially to Cal Poly. Had good grades too. I was doing really well, and when I was looking at the cost of what it would basically leave me with debt after finishing getting my degree or a basic bachelor's in mechanical engineering and working from home. I mean, living with my mom, working from home. And all that, I still was going to end up with about $80,000 in debt. And this was, that was back in 2008. I was looking at this. And so I was like, man, there's got to be a better way. I don't want to graduate and make $50,000 a year at the time. 56, I think, is what the estimate was. And I saw an ad in the paper showing, go through academy, make $60,000 a year as a police officer here locally. So there was a bit of a marketing push for that in our area. And I was like, man, that makes a lot of sense. How much is academy? I looked and I was like, it's $2,000. So I just got to save up a little bit. I was working at Starbucks at the time, not making any money, And so I was like, $2,000. That adds up. I could do that. And so I did that. So I saved up for about a year, did as much prep work as possible, and got into as good a shape as I could. And went to academy, graduated tied for valedictorian in my class, and got hired right out of the gates with Santa Maria PD. So really, I'm not necessarily a career-minded person. I'm more. I would say I'm more family oriented in my approach. I'll do anything for work if it lets me achieve what I want to do with my family. Guns just happen to be the happy place where I landed. And boy, I love it. It's really good. But anyway, I only worked at Santa Maria PD for about 6 months before I moved on. There's some internal turmoil in the department at the time, and it seemed like the best thing to do to move on and look for another department. And so I quit there, and in the process of looking for another job, another law enforcement job, nothing opened up, and my wife and I got pregnant with our first. And that was when we looked at each other and we're like, man, how hard would it be to move to Idaho and learn how to do what your father-in-law does for timber cruising? And so I actually ended up moving into the tree industry after that. But I won't go into that. I'll focus a little bit more on the law enforcement because that's the main focus of this podcast. During the time I was there, I had a great time. I was a pretty bad shot since I hadn't spent much time shooting, my family culture. And so I learned, I did my first batch of range days with them. And by the end of the second range day, they had us, I think it was either our second or third range day, they had us do the qual well in advance of the end of academy. And I was going to fail. I mean, my target, just the basic browns, I looked like a shotgun had hit it. My spread was so bad. My grouping was terrible. And so I remember asking my instructors, what do I do? What can I do to get better? Because I'm going to wash out. I'm not going to make it if I don't get better quick. And they said, do you have a gun at home? I said, no, I don't. Do you have an airsoft gun? Yeah, I do. And so they said, here's what we want you to do. We want you to practice your 5-step draw, and we want you to practice sighting in. Sight in on your target, do a slow controlled squeeze, focus on your finger placement on the trigger, try to get to the bottom of the shoe, do a slow controlled pull until you can surprise yourself with the break. And you're going to have to rack the slide between each press. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did that, and I went from looking like a shotgun hit the target over the next couple of weeks to looking like a softball went through the center. It was a fantastic improvement. But it is kind of funny too, by the same note, and this is where DryFire Mag kind of was very appealing to me. I was also one of those people that, as I'm doing the final qual, I was shooting great, very accurate, but between presses, I would get my shot off and I racked the slide on one of them and tossed a live round during the qual, and my classmates snickered at me. But then two of them did that too, because they were also practicing that. But so a fine time in law enforcement. By the time I got to Santa Maria PD, one of my training officers was like, you might have an aptitude for SWAT. He was particularly interested in putting me through sniper training. I didn't end up doing that, but it was definitely big shout out for DryFire. Yeah, the DryFire was the thing.
It is amazing how those what sometimes can feel inconsequential training habits can show up and rear their ugly head at the most inopportune moments. Because racking the slide for DryFire is one of those things that you sort of, back before we had the equipment that would allow us to not do that, you just get into the habit. I got to reset. I want to get my trigger, ready to go. I rack the slide. And then people, they don't believe it, but you will replicate what you have done at home in those situations. Much the same way I read an article that talks about a police officer who had drawn his firearm, or someone had drawn a gun on him. And without thinking about it, he disarmed the guy who drew the gun. And then he handed it back.
I'm so glad you're telling us. Keep going.
Because the mechanics were in the gym or the dojo or the training thing was I take the gun and now I hand it back to you. So we replicate. And there was no interruption. There was no cognitive disengage from the mechanics of handing the gun over. And so the two of them, the suspect and the police officer, now ended up in a scuffle for the gun because he did it on automatic. So given your background in jiu-jitsu, I'm going to let you run with it now because I know exactly where you want to take this.
Yeah, I heard that story. So in 1998 was when I got started in martial arts. It was one of the concessions from my parents after they moved us to California and yanked us out of all our social circles. Like, okay, we need to make it up to you now. Because up to that point, up to 12 years old, we weren't allowed to do wrestling, football, or most contact sports for that reason. But they're like, oh, there's this little Christian martial arts school on the other side of town. They can't be all that dangerous, all that bad. Well, it actually ended up resembling more like the Napoleon Dynamite dojo, with the flag pants and the American flag gis and everybody with mullets and, like they were walking around tough. There was a persona that came with it, this place. It was kind of it was a fun place to experience. But I remember during that time, they talked about exactly that testimony you mentioned, that police officer handing it back out of reflex because of his training. And that's so true. In fact, because of that, in recent years, with jiu-jitsu, occasionally I will actually go through disarms. I like keeping in the loop with what I was trained with for high-risk arrests from Academy. That's one of my favorite after actions. I mean, nobody talks about in martial arts, after you take the gun away, what do you do with it? Mm-hmm. And so I'll talk because I live in a very gun culture here in Camia. A lot of people here carry, a lot of people train. CCWs are super common around here too. So, but what's not common is what happens? What's the conversation look like between you and the suspect after you have to muzzle up on a guy and they don't end up in a fight with you? How do you control that? Where do you go from there? And so I agree with you. If you don't have that good follow through, you're going to fall back on whatever your training was. And in this case, most martial artists, they do the disarm and they hand it back. I would rather, and I actually had some of my students, before we started going into the high risk stuff as a basic training, I was like, instead of handing it back after you do your disarm, set it on the floor.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like keep your eye on your opponent and then set it on the floor. And then after that, we go further than that. When I have them start barking out orders like, you pull up your pants, use your big boy voice, take control, get the person down on their knees, turning around, and then prepare for what if they don't respond to that? What happens if they start charging at you in the middle of it? What happens if they run away from you during this? Because we can't control another person's behavior. Right. I mean, especially if they're hopped up on drugs, Yep. But what you're saying, that after action training, so important. We want to fall back on good habits, have good preparation and good training.
Absolutely. Which is why live fire is really important to pair with your dry fire, because I have the same situation, not the martial arts side of things, but when I train women and we go through dry fire first, and then when they go to live fire, because I start warming them up in the range, listening to all, the gunfire going off in the range, warm them up with dry fire, then we go to live fire and they want to rack the slide. And I go through the motion. I just say, all right, do it. I let them do it, because then it's kind of like, okay, now what? Well, can you pick it up? Can you reuse it? Did you see where it went? Because if you didn't see where it went, I wouldn't suggest picking up somebody else's ammo. If you saw where you went, I show them how that they can check to make sure that it wasn't struck on the back, the primer, just to reinforce this was mine. This wasn't struck. I can reuse this. Put it back in your gun. But after, one or two shots, they're back into that new habit. So, and then if they start throwing rounds, flipping their wrist, also drop the magazine, drop the ammo. Let's go back to dry fire, training that brain on that steady trigger pull. So it's just all about reinforcing. And if you only do one and not the other, which is kind of the premise of why we're having you here too, is just having these conversations about the difference between dry fire, rack the slide, dry fire not racking the slide, and then live fire, all have their place. And so many people, say, dry fire, or I get enough live practice. And it's kind of like, okay, if you rather spend a whole bunch of money on live ammo, by all means, I will do my 5 minutes, 3 times a week and save, a couple $100. Thanks. So yeah, just crazy what habits can impress so quickly.
Well, I think, and I've come across this time and time again in various classes where people underestimate the impact of stress and what happens cognitively when their brain decides, okay, I'm going to basically devolve back to the monkey brain. The prefrontal cortex gets shut down. Now you're operating on pure muscle memory and stress and instincts. And in the cold light of day, especially in a classroom or a dojo, it can be very hard sometimes to instill the stress needed to replicate what you're really ultimately going to do. Because in the classroom, everybody sits looking at me
practice.
like that wouldn't happen to me. I'm a cool cat under pressure. And yet with a little bit of additional pressure, you can start to see the fraying at the edges. The skills starts to come undone. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, damn, maybe I really do need to. And then that goes right back to be consistent with my training, understand the cognitive implications and stress impact in a critical situation, and train accordingly, but get in as much training as you can. And I think, as you said, Kristen, with so many people, turn their nose up at dry fire training. And I'm like, but you could do that at home. Let's say you've got 10 minutes.
Right.
That's it for today. Right. I can do that 7 times a week, and then once a week I go to the range. And it's like, okay, I got to fit in what I can, where I can. And if you happen to have a family as well, it can be tough to get to the range as often as you might like.
Right. Absolutely. Crazy.
So I'd love to hear how DryFire Mag got started, and if there's any tie-in there with, the practice and the convenience, etc.
Sure. Yeah. So the story goes as follows. Around 2010, our founder, Stan Siegler, who's no longer with us, unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago. In 2010, he went to Front Sight Training School in Pahrump, Nevada. And he loved his training, and he was taught to dry fire there. And back at the time, people were really starting to push dry fire and saying, most people who do just dry fire do just as well as far as their shot placement as people who are doing live fire only. And so he was really impressed by that and thought, okay, I want to make sure I'm devoting a significant amount of time to dry fire. But he just got really fed up with racking the slide. So Stan, by trade, was primarily a pastor at the time. So he loves working in the church, but he's also a gun guy. So it's kind of a fun dynamic there. But he went back to CAMI and started tinkering in his basement. He has a background in mechanical engineering, has a degree in engineering. And so he started tinkering. And the next thing you know, he finally got a mag to work. And he ran downstairs and was yelling to Sally, his wife, it clicked, it's working. And so
that's awesome.
It's been a really slow start for them. That neither of them had machinations to start a company like this. Neither of them have a background in anything kind of like this. And so they've been trying to gather people around them over the last decade to help them grow this product, grow and enter into this industry. And it's been a really cool thing to come alongside and see. Warts and all, and bumps in the road and all. They're really great people. Sally's still currently alive. She's semi-retired right now, but she's still involved with the company. Her son John is doing the bulk of it right now. So kind of neat seeing it continue in the family. And I got involved in 2017. I was, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, I'm not a career-minded person. I'm more like, okay, what's my means to do things the way I want to do with my kids? And in 2017, I had an opportunity. I got my local martial arts club started in 2015 while I was doing some other things. And in 2017, an opportunity came up to call them. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in this. I really respect the value of dry fire. And he's like, yeah, I can get you started. And so I started working for them, and they didn't have much work. I think my first paycheck was $40 for the whole month. They do things as independent contractors, really neat, different approach to the way they do things. They actually, for assemblers in our company, we work from home. So we work as contractors for the company. We pick up our parts. We go home and we do our work with our kids, with our family. The one requirement is we do have to have the pistol that matches our magazine, and so we can test it in an actual in an actual pistol when we're done with it. But I worked for them in 2017. Did several years of just working. It was actually kind of funny. I joked with Stan at one point when he had me to SHOT Show with him 3 years later. I was like, I think this is the second time I've seen you in 3 years, because a lot of my work was very autonomous. But next thing you know, John's coming on board in 2021, and he says, Matt, we appreciate all the work you put in, and we want to have you do more. You want to get involved in social media? And I was like, I don't have a background in social media, but he's like, okay, well, we need somebody to do it. You want to do it? And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so I've been doing it since 2021. And next thing you know, sorry, what was that?
Sucker.
Yeah. I'm in it now. Right? Battles with Meta and everything, But anyway, in 2022, I think was my first SHOT Show. I got to go with them, and that was really fun. I'm an extrovert by nature, and I'm working to be more introverted as I get older.
Yep,
people are people. But yeah, SHOT Show has been a blast, and I really enjoy engaging. It's an easy product for me to sell because I believe in it. And now just this last year, we have, I'm trying to remember, we have about a dozen assemblers now, and John asked me if I wanted to do the management of that and make sure I'm setting protocols that are correct for the people, because I've been doing it a long time. And so that's kind of my story and a little bit of how the company got started, and not everything in there. It's too long a story to go into all the details, but that's the gist of it.
So have you had any feedback from shooters that has surprised you, reference to the DryFire Mags? Kristen, I know you have. Bitter and twisted.
Well, he and I talk, I won't say very often, but we do talk often. And it's usually about product stuff and questions and things people say, and that it's just like, really? But I'm sure you have the same.
Yeah, probably. Well, as far as things that are surprising about the product, there are a couple things. Like sometimes it's just out of ignorance. People will say, well, I could just buy snap caps. Okay, that's ignorance. that's to protect your firing pin, right? And potentially other stuff. Or other people saying you could do the same thing, putting a zip tie in your Glock slide to just give it a mushy trigger. Well, that'll let your trigger return forward, but you're not getting the wall, the break, or the reset. And that's very important to us. Probably the most amazing reference, and I know Kristen will appreciate this, because what you were saying earlier about live fire balanced with dry fire. I've had some people come by. This was actually at SHOT Show once. Somebody came by our booth and said, I don't need this. Anytime I ever draw my gun out, it is only to put lead downrange. I will not draw my gun for any reason other than to put lead downrange. And I said, well, your advice would have failed me at a police academy.
Yep.
I wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
And I said, people need this, especially new shooters. Heck, professional shooters are some of our, competitive shooters are some of our best customers, because they see the value in being able to do the layered approach. Do your dry fire, do your live fire. So that was probably the most surprising, just that there are some people that are still kind of stuck in that antiquated mode of thinking we have to throw brass, we have to shoot lead downrange, and there's just no other way for them to think about it. That's probably the most surprising.
So on that, though, and it's interesting because now he's just training. The only time he can throw one round down is to draw. So then what happens with the after? So it's the second shot, the transitions, the moving, the shoot, up range, down range, getting off the X, because a lot of that stuff you cannot do at a range, let alone drawing from a holster, quite honestly. Obviously, where he's doing it, he can, I'm assuming, or he's placing it on a table, and now you're training your brain to pick it up from a table. So are you truly drawing from a concealed location or where you normally carry? So there's just so many things to unpack about that. But to your point, it's like, that's not just realistic.
Doesn't it surprise you, though, how rigid some people are? I've always approached things saying, well, is there some trick out there, some piece of equipment, or even just a different mindset that will allow me to get better? And I don't care what it is, as long as I'm improving. And even just a 1% improvement, well, 1%, maybe it's monthly or yearly. That's a great improvement. And if you're a competitive shooter, or if you're even new to shooting, or you're trying to qualify to get into the police force, you want to make these improvements. It's so funny to me that people are like, no, this is the only way you do it. I'm like, there's a million ways that you could do this. So I want to follow up on that. So for a shooter who is new to dry fire, what do you think the biggest mistakes are that they typically make?
Definitely racking the slide, but that's, in the grand scheme of things, that's not too bad. It is avoidable now. I'm using myself as an example, because the DryFire Mag wasn't out when I was learning to shoot. And so I did have to rack the slide, and then I had to overcome that muscle memory. Today, though, there's no excuse for it. You can either buy the mag from us. You can buy it now from Laser Ammo too. You can buy it from Amazon. Please don't. You can get it, go direct, go with either Laser Ammo or us. That's great. But I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes. And then also, I really like your point, what Kristen, you were kind of driving at, that tunnel vision. Don't be tunnel visioned. There are a lot of different instructors out there, and mine were both front sight trained at Police Academy. But since then, moving up here, I train under there's an organization called AFD, American Freedom Defense, and the instructor here is a former undersheriff, and he's very open-minded. He's very much of the mindset we want to learn from as many people as possible, get as many perspectives as possible. So I think that's even broader than racking the slide. Having a tunnel-visioned, we can only do it this way. I agree with you guys. I think that's a mistake. And so encouraging new shooters to be open-minded, to try different methods. I think that's probably the best advice I could give a new shooter is be open-minded, be receptive, find what works for you, and discard the rest.
And I think adding on to that, Matt, by going to different instructors, you learn different things that you can do for dry fire. I think a lot of new shooters, even the ladies that I train, they're like, well, I don't know what to do. They think you have to go through this whole motion. And it's not even the whole motion. It's not a, stance, draw, extend to fire, sights, trigger, reset, start over. It could be just a matter of 20 extend to fires, or, starting at one target and transitioning to the next and doing that 20 times just to check your, following your eyes, that kind of thing. You don't have to practice the whole motion. It could be just even 20 draws, and all you're doing is getting a good draw to see that you get a good handle on it. So having different instructors, you're hearing different opinions of things that may work. Yeah, some you're going to catalog it, some you're going to disregard it, but you're going to grab nuggets from all those different instructors. So I love that, Matt.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I do have a follow-up thought on that too. In light of what you're saying, something that we've been doing internal trainings with our company too. I'm charged with now bringing a little tidbit for every one of our meetings. And one of the things that I've noticed, especially for people who dry fire too much and don't get enough live fire in, is their stance suffers. A lot of times you have people leaning back,
Yep.
while they're sighting in, instead of getting that good weight into your toes, hips behind you. And so that's something that's good. I mean, as an instructor, I know you can appreciate that, making sure that you're teaching, even when they're dry firing, to get that good absorption set up for recoil, because you can so easily forget about recoil.
Because you don't get recoil with dry fire. Absolutely. And yeah, just the stance. That's something you can just, getting the gun in hand as you extend out, you're leaning forward, your, shoulders over toes, and getting a good stance, slight bend in your knee, all that. You can practice that, and doesn't cost you anything.
It's so valuable. Valuable.
And it's convenient. You can pick it up whenever.
Right.
So as you also teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, do you see any other parallels between martial arts and firearms training?
Yes. I'm going to reframe that though. A lot of people think of martial arts as a separate thing from firearms. And I'm going to say this. Martial arts is a conversation that starts from verbal self-defense and goes all the way up to lethal force through firearms or knives.
Absolutely.
They are related. They are connected. First line of defense, the way you talk. I mean, if you're agitating somebody, you're you're escalating. Anything about escalating and de-escalating. I'm really passionate about that. How do we, with jiu-jitsu, it's kind of a unique slot in the martial arts world. Is if I hit you, Terry, you're going to be pretty ticked, and you're probably going to want to hit me back or throw coffee in my face or something like that. But if I put a hand on you, you're like, okay, I'm just going to try and get that hand off, most likely, right? It's offensive to have somebody touch you, come into your space and touch you. It's more offensive if somebody were to slap you. It's much more offensive if somebody tried to stab you or shoot you. And it's the least if somebody's, maybe it can be a bit more agitated. Some people are very good with words.
Yeah.
Some people, it's worse than a slap in the face with some of their words. But yes, there are tremendous parallels. I do think there are parallels, but there's also that spectrum. Everything's on that spectrum between conversation up into lethal force. When people come in and they are asking me about martial arts, I actually had a conversation with a gentleman last week. He wasn't as interested in jiu-jitsu because he's like, well, did you see that attack over in London with the knives, or in England with the knives, and how all that panned out? He's like, I don't want to end up on the ground. I don't want to end up dealing with that. I was like, okay, you're talking about a very specific part of the spectrum, and you're assuming that's the only thing that's going to happen. And so martial arts is much bigger than that. If you're concerned about somebody and he's wanting to learn how to strike, he's wanting to learn how to kick and punch, and I can do that. I have a background in that, in karate. Used to compete in that too. But I was like, if you're worried about a knife, you need to get good at cardio.
Yeah.
You need to be able to run. Because even if you're fighting that guy with a knife or with a gun and you stay in his range, I mean, you're going to get hurt badly, if not killed. I mean, there's the old saying, and if there's two guys in a knife fight, one guy's going to the morgue, one guy's going to the hospital. Right. There's no middle ground there. And so in that conversation, I was like, if you're really concerned about knives, do you carry a firearm? Like that's probably the best place to go. If you're concerned about going into a place where people are going to stab you, you should probably carry a firearm and keep your distance from people. But jiu-jitsu is still really important. It's probably the closest to the least escalatory part of that spectrum. Starting from conversation, if somebody's in your space and they're putting their hands on you, they've committed a battery, okay, we can take them down to the ground, we can control them and continue the conversation from a position of advantage where they can't hit us. That said, we do want to be aware of where their hands are. I mean, the hands are what's going to kill you. If you let their hands go to their waistline, that's probably where they're storing their weapons. So that's one thing. It's a fair criticism of a lot of modern jiu-jitsu. Sport jiu-jitsu tends to ignore a lot of that and focus on points, winning competitions. The way I teach it, I also focus on the point system, but every time I'm teaching, I'm like, okay, so if you're in a sporting context, here's your points, but look at the hands over here for a second. Let's assume, and I actually have play knives and play guns, and I have some people put them in their waistbands, and like, okay, we'll see if you can get to those while we're in these positions. And we find within jiu-jitsu, there's positions that are more valuable than others because we can assess where their hands are. We can assess where this stuff. I'm going on a bit of a tangent on jiu-jitsu. I think you can tell I'm excited about it.
Nope.
But yeah, even within firearms, I would say the parallel to that is that with firearms, what I was mentioning earlier about the disarms, taking control with your big boy voice. Ultimately, none of us want to have to shoot another human being. None of us want to do that. And so being able to use violence, though, to counter violence against yourself is important. And knowing how's that going to play out? Am I mentally prepared to take that shot? If I can, I would rather take control. I would rather de-escalate. I would rather bring that person down to a place where they're not a threat to me and I don't have to kill them. I don't want to shoot another human being. No. And so, yeah, there's a lot of parallels. And I think not being in a tunnel vision mindset of thinking, okay, if I have a gun, I have to shoot somebody with it. Okay. You do need to be prepared to, but I think you should also prepare for taking control of that conversation with that person. If you're holding someone at gunpoint, you need to have multiple options and be prepared to use whatever's necessary for the context of your situation.
Absolutely.
So that's probably a good place to cap that thought.
It was good though.
Well, I want to go back to what you said about being on that spectrum, the sliding scale, right? Because having taught a variety of combatives over the years, I have found that men typically tend to gravitate towards action-driven endeavors. They want to know how to fight. They want to know how to stab. They want to know how to shoot. They want to know how to hit. And I have found that because they feel that they can rely on physicality, there's a move and a shift in bias towards I'll be action oriented. And I'm like, that's fine. Have those skills because they're like concentric rings of response, right? Yes, we can do verbal judo. Yes, if someone puts hands on, we need to know how to deal with that, but we also need to know how and when is the right time to draw our defensive tool, whatever that may be. It's all sort of heading in that direction if you can't find an alternative way to escape it. But the hardest thing I've found over the years is getting people to learn the first 80% of what they should be doing when they're out and about, which is just being alert and aware of what's going on. Even understanding how their own brain processes visual data so that you can see it coming, the potential threat or problem from so far away that you don't ever get to this place where you're like, okay, I got to go hands on, right? I got to go to my gun or I got to go to my knife. You don't want that complication in your life. Everybody feels like it would be heroic, but you're going to end up either criminally or civilly in court and charged. So it's really hard to get guys, particularly I think, to sort of lean into, okay, let's get my brain in the game first. Let me understand how my brain works and be attentive and scan. And I found that over the years of teaching both situational awareness and combatives, women tend to come in and go, I am absolutely going to avoid this fight if I can. And if I can see it coming and, take advantage of my observational skills, that's what I'll do. And men, like I'd recently had an edge weapons class. It filled up in 3 days. Most of them were men. There were some women, but it was mostly men. Everyone's ready to start carving. And I'm like, if you end up in a knife fight, Some of you aren't going to make it. In fact, the majority of you are probably not going to make it. So I had the first bit of this class was, here's some situational awareness stuff. And I went into how the brain works and processing visual data. And people came out going, oh, that was fantastic. Like, I didn't know that about how our eyes and brain process. And I'm like, I've been teaching these classes here for years and you've never been.
Right.
Like, please join me for one of these. I know you want to learn to be a badass, and that's great to have those skills. But again, it's on a sliding scale. You get to those when no other options are open to you. And of course, if you see a threat coming from far enough away, you can avoid it. That's your best option.
Absolutely.
I love that, man. You're speaking my language.
On top, yes.
That's why, as a young man, I was like, I want to get in. I want to grow up and be. And it's actually funny. Is it just me, or as I've gotten older and more involved in martial arts, I'm actually gravitating more towards what you describe as the women's approach, trying avoidance. But as a young man, I was exactly what you described. Like, let's start carving the turkey, man.
Is it that we're less able and we're like a little slower, a little reaction time? But I think, the women are just like, I don't want to get into this. I'm going to pay attention, because I think being the weaker sex, strength-wise, clear, right? Then we have to go by what else we have, because we are hand-to-hand, you and I, Matt or Terry, even without your martial arts skill, you're probably going to overpower me. And we need to start with you don't need to get in my personal space in the first place. And how do we do that? By not putting us in the position to where somebody's in our personal space, paying attention to those who are around us, paying attention versus being on our phones, having our back to a wall, versus our back to 5 people I don't know. So, all that.
Maybe you guys are just smarter than us. Maybe women are just smarter than men.
There was the obvious thing that I wasn't going to drop on you guys.
Definitely.
My wife's listening to this podcast right now, I hope.
She already knows.
She knows. It doesn't hurt. I attribute it to being wiser. I'm sure I'm slower and my joints creak and pop more regularly, but...
Which just alludes to the point that Matt said, which we're wiser because we started this earlier on.
Hello, mates. Just a quick request. If you haven't already, go ahead, hit subscribe, like, and share. We would appreciate it. Cheers. So I'll leave you with a tough question here, Matt. Where do you see shooter training going or evolving in the next 5 to 10 years? Or perhaps, where would you like it to go? Might be a better question.
Well, I gotta say, all the advances in technology usually surprise me. I was one of those losers that saw when Netflix announced they were going to do online streaming. I was like, there's no way that's going to work. DVDs, so.
Yeah, right.
I'll admit it. I'm a very present thinker. As far as things, I don't know. One of the things that does have my attention, I'm pretty interested in some of what they're doing with VR simulation. Ace is one company that's doing that. Game is another one that we work with. We're affiliated with them as far as the VR work. I don't think it's where I'd like it to be just yet, but I think there's definitely promise with that. The closer, one of the things the smokeless range does really good. I really like how you guys can build in the scenario training, and then you can go back afterwards and see where you hit. I think that's probably the next frontier, because we've got decent. At least that's what where I'd like to see things go even better. So we can create those varied scenarios and break up some of those tunnel vision thoughts in shooters and law enforcement, especially too. Give them good prep, because my goodness, I remember the first time I got a call, I'm getting sidetracked here. Sorry. I remember the first time I got a call to a robbery happening, and my heart rate went through the roof. I'm driving to this thing and escalation, adrenaline, everything, and get there, and the guy's not even there anymore. So I didn't even have to deal with the guy, but my brain was running 1,000,000 miles a minute. What if? Mm-hmm. And I think being exposed to that sort of stress beforehand and having additional training, and I think VR could eventually grow into something pretty special.
Anything in the works with DryFire Mag that you can share? Like, what do you have going now?
Sure. So boring answer for the first part, but I'll give you a little tidbit. The Walther PDP is getting very close. We have all of our overall engineering complete. We are, and this is the exciting, so that's going to be released hopefully, I'll say within the next 6 months, just because I'm like, it might actually be sooner, but
you don't know.
You know how it goes. It goes. But what's exciting is the reason it's being held up right now is because we're modifying the way we produce our parts. And we're coming up, we've come up with a new method that we're investing in that may potentially let us develop mags at a significantly faster rate for new models. And if that's the case, everybody's going to be I'm going to be happy because I have pistols that we don't have DryFire mags for. So that's probably the most exciting thing. We have the Walther coming out. One of the other things that's neat about the Walther, for any Canik users out there, this is very likely going to work in Canik as well with some adjustment. But since the mag wells and the trigger bars match, it's a pretty good estimate to say Canik is going to be served at the same time or around the same time as Walther. So that's there. I got that private information I gave you guys that I can't say on air, but just to jingle it out in front of other people, there are exciting things in the works. And Kristen's going to be really happy. And if you know Kristen, there's a clue. And if you know Terry, there's a clue. So
no, but I think that's good because I know you guys have been talking about the Walther for a while now, and I know about the production part. So that's great news to see the ability to funnel more out. And hopefully, I know we have a lot of Walther people and Canik people that have been asking for a while as well. So that's awesome. Hope to see it sooner than later, but understand how technology and things work because we have the same issue. Super excited about that.
That's awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for taking time to share what was a wealth of knowledge and perspective on a variety of things, including DryFire mags. That's it for today's episode. As always, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It's a free and easy way to support the show and help us bring you the guests you want to hear from. For now, I hope all of you have a smashing day, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.